So yeah, basically I just want to get an insight into what your perceptions are, because obviously me having a physical disability, I don't have that insight because I have one, so my insight is immediately different from yours. So first of all, I mean, I can start with perhaps British culture. I think generationally it's changed a lot, in my opinion, from what I've seen through time, and even more recently. I think my mum, for example, she only had an encounter with one physically disabled person in her life, and that person was sort of very limited in what they could do, in a sense, not physically, but just by society's views. I don't know what the disability was, and I don't think my mum even knew, but she knew they were sort of different. And I don't know how sort of what their life was like, but I think even my mum was sort of acutely aware that they were different and they had limitations placed upon them, which I think nowadays is less of a thing. I think British culture, we still have a long way to go. We're by no means perfect, but I think the UK is very advanced in how it looks upon both physically and mentally disabled people, and also people with learning difficulties, things like that. We're all a lot more inclusive, and I think we're getting better year upon year. Though having said that, it's still there's still some way to go for a lot of different things. So that's my sort of perception so far. And obviously my perception of physical disability is all about my own experiences, I suppose. But as I've gotten older, I suppose I'm always reminded of how it could be worse. That's how I always sort of see it, because I'm fairly independent and I suppose blessed in that sense of I haven't got a severe version of cerebral palsy, and I've come across a lot of people who have a lot more severe version, which means that they're wheelchair bound and they have a lot of different things, and also generally more severe physically disabled people as well. And I think I've got an insight from that from doing physio and things with different people throughout the years, and meeting different people in hospitals and things where I've been and things like that. So yeah, that's my little piece of it. So I'm interested in what was your sort of first experiences and with disabled people, or talking about it, perhaps asking your parents or anything like that.
Okay, for me, in my community, Mauritian Solution, we are like, we hide. If we have, in our family, we have a disabled person, we try to hide. We don't want to let people know about it.
Yeah.
They will say, people will say, to call us name. So they hide. That is not good. Sometimes I know people who are struggling with their daily life, but they don't want to go to look for help, just because people will say something else, or they will be hurt, or they just keep quiet. They prefer to be like cut off from the world, or to look for help and to get some support. But I know here we have support. They don't want to step in to look for help.
So do you think that's the disabled person's decision, or do you think that's more often forced upon them, or a bit of both?
They're both.
Both.
Yeah, both. With the mom who has little one kids who has the problem, is disabled, say it's a problem, disabled, they don't want to move forward. So the adult also, they try to be like, I can do it without any help, but you see that they are not doing it well, but they don't want to step forward into us.
Do you think they fear they're like sort of being stigmatized because if they went to
Yes,
get help?
yes. I think in our community we need to explain that to young people, young kids in their small age, so they will know that is not a problem. You need to step in and to talk about it or to help. Or sometimes people say, "Oh, mom, why he's like that?" So you need to like already educate your
Yeah.
kids at home and to let them know what is happening, what is why this person or this person they are different.
Mm.
And I think it's important, like especially from say South Asian background or even like you said a Caribbean black background, you don't really learn about disability say from your peers or your parents. It's usually from TV, you know, movies, and so your perceptions are slightly different. So like you said, no one's going to sit down, and even if you've got someone in the family with a disability or friend, you're not really explained. It's not really explained to you sort of what their disability is and the impact, or how how you can help them. But I think we get most of my perceptions came from sort of media and films and TV, when they're mostly sort of negative, or the sort of cliche disabled person in a wheelchair or they can't talk. So it's really, and like you said, there's obviously hidden disabilities as well. So I think, like you say, sometimes I think the stigma, if you're someone who hasn't got a visible disability, then that's another stigma, because you're thinking, well, if I reach out for help, people are going to think, oh, there's nothing wrong with your son, or there's nothing wrong with your child. But obviously people don't understand that. So I think the stigma can work both ways, whether it's hidden or not. But I think it does definitely stop people from reaching out and getting help, because it is what other people will think, unfortunately, rather than their own needs. They're thinking of other people's perceptions, which it shouldn't be that way.
And also from the African background, I think it's not only young people, it's the culture they're growing up in. Because if you have a child and there's something wrong with you, you tend to be sure it's something the parents would have done or the parents' parents would have done. So it's something somebody must have done, and that you're being punished for that. And also, as you said, it's about teaching the children, but then children learn from adults. So you tend to look at what the adult is doing, the adult's reaction to that situation, and then the children follow. But because don't forget as well, not everybody has TV or radio, but they spend a lot of time within the family. I remember going to houses, at one particular house where there was always somebody behind the wall, and it took years as I was older and realized the person was behind the wall, behind the curtain, was somebody's sister, and she must have had a learning disability. So they hid that person away, but you could hear the noises coming from the back. So you knew there was a person there. And then also when you have children who are young and they've got disability, as Shirley's saying, they hide them away, but then they cut off the family as well, or the mother as well. And you have situation where if it's boys, then the fathers or whoever will tend to walk away, because they still don't get this concept of it's not based on the mother's whatever for her to give birth to boys. It has to do with the father, and he would walk away to look for another perfect child somewhere else. You have men where the firstborn has a disability, and off they go. So who's going to teach them?
I think as well it's a very especially hard on the parents and for the mothers as well, because I think there's something called like mother's guilt. Like if there's anything to feel guilty about, the mother's going to be feeling guilty about it. Like, and you're always going to be asking yourself questions about, as a parent, being like, did I do enough? Did I do the right thing? Blah blah blah. So when your child is diagnosed with a disability, or you can see they're obviously different in some sort of way, you will immediately be blaming yourself anyway. You will probably be questioning yourself, even if that's not the reason at all. And even in any culture, and also my parents probably went through the same thing, though they would never, I don't think they've ever told me about it, but because especially with cerebral palsy, it's something to do with damage to the brain that's happened before, during or after birth. So obviously then that can put the onus onto the mother. Like then as a mother you're thinking, did I do something wrong? Was it that little bump that I had, or like when like all these questions come along, and if your culture is already placing the blame on you, it can make it a lot harder, I think. And I think as well, because my mum, she experienced, when she was pregnant with me, she experienced bleeding like halfway through the pregnancy onwards. So it was kind of like, I've done something wrong, there's something going on. And the doctors were kind of like, we don't know what it is, but carry on with the pregnancy and see what happens. So then it was kind of a situation of my mum and dad were probably preparing themselves for a miscarriage. And they were like, well, we're just going to have to wait. And then it was like, obviously, thankfully, that didn't happen. And then all this other stuff going on. And then the early birth and the incubation and all this sort of stuff. And it's a very stressful time for the parents. But then if you're having people around you in the moment where you need the most support, being like, well, you must have done something, or your baby has been cursed by this, or you're like you've said before, Geraldine, you were too smart, so your baby is dumb. Like, you know, like your baby is suffering because of you. It's completely counterintuitive to what the mother needs at the time, and the father as well. And yeah, I think it's important to, as you all say, to like have education from an early age. One thing is not your fault, and sometimes these things just happen, and another thing is the reason why these disabilities happen, and sometimes there is no discernible reason, and it's like, well, it's just the cards you've been dealt.
Also, don't you think it's about like educating, like something you've just said, it's about damage to the brain? Now, the minute you say damage to the brain, I'll be thinking, well, is that mental illness?
Yeah.
But then, you don't look mentally challenged at all to me, or don't sound. Well, yeah, to be so, I think there's a difference as to what damage was actually done.
Yeah, and...
Because are you saying that you've got damage to the brain then, or?
Yeah.
Like, so how is that affecting you?
Part of my brain is actually dead, like part of it. I had a bleed on the brain, a hemorrhage, which then killed off the cells. And so the way it affects me is to do with the signals to my legs, the movement signals. And they're weaker. So then my muscles don't develop as well because the signals aren't there to communicate properly. And it can affect you in a lot of different ways. It's so complex, you know, that as soon as you get on the brain, it's like it's huge, like the effects it can have. So cerebral palsy it's a neurological condition because it's to do with the damage of the brain, but what it affects is different. So you can have diplegia, which is legs, hemiplegia, which is one side, and then quadriplegia, which is all four limbs. And it's to do with your movement and your balance, but it can also lead to tiredness because you're using your more power in your brain to get to these things. And it's so complex, but obviously when you see the symptoms of something like cerebral palsy, people immediately think it's because you've had an accident or something, and it's your legs that are damaged or it's your arms that are damaged, but it's actually your brain. And yeah, it's it's not a thing in education to learn about these things and to see, you know, and thankfully for me it hasn't led to any sort of learning disabilities or anything, but you find that cerebral palsy has a lot of comorbidities. So it's like you're more likely to have learning disabilities, swallowing problems, epilepsy, and problems with your eyes, vision. And I had something called a squint. I'm not sure I think it's called something like, I can't remember. But it means that, the medical term for it, I can't remember, but it means that one of your eyes points outwards or inwards. So I'm looking at you, but you can see my eye going this way a bit or that way a bit.
Don't worry, I don't.
But actually, I got corrective surgery on it. And it was mostly cosmetic reasons, just because I could then have two eyes that are looking straight where I'm looking. But also it can lead to vision problems and things. So you often find a lot of children with cerebral palsy, they'll have like an eye patch on for a while because they'll try to correct it before they go to surgery. And I've had a lot of people saying to me, "Oh, get this surgery, it will cure you." And I'm like, it's not it's not going to cure me because it's my brain. You're dealing with symptoms, you're not dealing with the source, you know. So that's always the misconception, I think. And Jen has just joined us, so we're just doing a little like podcasty type thing.
Okay.
So we're just saying about perceptions in different cultures about physical disability in general, and perhaps how yours has changed perhaps through the years, perhaps when you first met someone who is physically disabled, or as you've just grown up and educated yourself, or has it not changed? And what sort of upbringing did you have in your culture in terms of surrounding physical disability? So yeah, we're just, throwing you in at the deep end. What do you think? But so we were just discussing different perceptions. And I think the overarching thing we found is education is really important, isn't it? From a very young age. A very young age as well.
Do you not think, though, so I think I've come across this, that children when they're very young are pretty neutral and accepting about most things. They learn their prejudice from school and adults,
Yes.
I feel.
Yes.
My first encounter was when I was 4 and I just moved to this country, and I was at nursery school and there was a girl there with cerebral palsy. It was my first time I got into trouble at school, not my last, but one of my first times, because we ended up in a fight.
You're nice.
And I was told, I didn't know, it's only in hindsight I knew this girl had cerebral palsy, but I was told that I wasn't allowed to behave in any way, shape or form around this person in particular because they had something wrong with them. They were handicapped was the word they used. And I was like, but she stamped on my car.
Yeah.
I was 4, it was that sort of thing of injustice, that I had to behave a totally different way around this person, And I thought that was kind of odd because I didn't see them as different. I think lots of kids probably don't at that age.
I don't think kids do at all because when you watch kids playing and growing up, they just want to get on with whatever they're getting on with.
Yeah.
And I think most of the adults either trying to make somebody safe or trying to protect somebody from something that doesn't need protection from. But then also, because children will go in nursery, go home, and kids can go to a party for half an hour and they have a new best friend. And 2 hours later they cry not wanting to leave the best friend and go home. But with adults, we take whatever we have into it. And talk about different cultures, we'll also see sometimes as well, and again, maybe some in Africa, and people grown up with, or they'll show villages where somebody could have a disability and you still see them carrying that bucket on their head to go and get water, go to the market, or walking miles to go to school. All it means is you leave earlier. You're slower. You're not like wrapped up and
you make those adjustments, but you don't need to be protected. And also, I have a thing that I always say, like in my family, so excuse my language, but I say you can be disabled and still be an arsehole. Like, and I'm sorry to use a horrible word, but I do say it. If someone's nasty, but you have that.
Or if you're a nasty person, you're a nasty person.
Yeah.
If you're not nice, you're not nice.
Exactly.
Whatever shape or form you're
you're
not nice.
It's almost like an angel complex. Like people are like, don't touch them, they're disabled. Well, and like you say, she did something mean to you, so you retaliated. And even if someone's in a wheelchair, if they're being mean to you, you're still going to call them up on it. Like, you're not protected because of that. But again, it's the societal perception of they must be protected. They must be tiptoed around. And it's like, and I would hate that. If I'm being mean to someone or if I'm being out of order, then call me up on it. Like, I help to be held accountable. And it is that perception. And people then think, I can't touch them because they're disabled. Like, let them just be a bit mean and be a bit wrong about something, but it's not. And the same with what you're saying about you protect them so much, but actually a lot of people with physical disabilities can do the same things. It's just they need those adjustments, or they need to either go a bit earlier or do things a slightly different way and stuff. Yeah, it's interesting that society still has that kind of idea of protecting them and always giving them the benefit of the doubt, whereas I think a physically able-bodied person wouldn't get that. They wouldn't be afforded that.
No, and that's the start of the prejudice you put into kids, because then
Yeah.
you're now thinking, oh well, I can't behave normally. I can behave normally over here, but over here I mustn't. And that's the start of putting those layers down. And these people are different,
Yeah.
you know, and instead of educating them properly to say this is just something this person has, it makes them different to you. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you know.
And with kids or with adults, do we need to say? Do we need to tell them, or do we just need to leave people to just get on with
Maybe
it?
just let them be, I don't know.
Something like what we've done here. How do you find working with us here in Rivers?
I think it's great, and I've been very lucky because I've met the people I've met in my life. They don't treat me any different, and you guys are the same. Like, it's just a complete non-issue, which is how I'd rather it to be. Like,
I
it's
could be
absolutely
horrible
fine.
with you as we've been horrible with everybody.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, that's what I would prefer, and I have been very lucky because for the most part, most people do just treat me as not different at all. And I think maybe that's my approach because of my approach to it, but also because of you guys being open-minded and things. I do kind of worry though that in the same vein, I think sometimes people want to talk about it, but they feel scared to. Like they'll have questions, but they don't want to ask me or things like that. So yeah, it's a sort of a catch-22. I want people to obviously not see it as an issue, but equally I want people to not see it as a taboo to ask things.
I think you don't want to limit as well, like you were saying, just general. I wouldn't walk in and be like, right, well, you can't do this, Geraldine, regardless of your disability. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to limit people. Like you say, you know yourself better, so you know what your limits are.
Yeah.
So if you can't do it, and that's just everyone,
Yeah,
you
because
would
we
say,
don't think
this is
about
too
that, do
much,
we?
or I
Yeah.
can't do this.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's a better approach rather than going in and thinking, right, this person's got, maybe they can't do things. Actually, no, I can, or I can push myself. So I think again, like you say, it's giving them a bit of autonomy.
Yeah.
I think, like you say, it comes back into, especially if you're, if it's the carer or caree relationship. Sometimes they might coddle them and think, okay, well, no, they can't go out, or they can't play with these children, they can't do this. But actually, you don't really know until you put them in a situation. Obviously, don't put them in a dangerous situation. Sort of leave them in the middle of nowhere. But like,
Make your own way back.
Yeah, make your own way home. But I think again, some people, like you said, we've seen people run marathons, and do climbing and do lots of different sports and things. So actually, again, with adjustments, people can push themselves, but only you really know your limits. So I think again, it's giving people that autonomy to decide what they're capable of.
It's interesting so you say that, because what I was thinking about is when I was growing up, when I was young, from the time I was very young, I remember my parents, so I was thinking more around ability and things. My parents used to volunteer and donate and fundraise and things for what they used to call the Special Olympics, the Paralympics. And so I was, from when I was very young, and I can remember they would do a lot around that and would talk to my sister and I about it. So I very much had the impression of these extraordinary people who actually are just living their life the way we all do, but overcoming perhaps more challenges than, say, I had.
So you had a lot more exposure and probably positive.
But in a positive way, definitely. Certainly I was fortunate. I do think a lot of it comes from your parents, and then also from friends and what they've learned from their other adults or parents or teachers, depending, or just anybody who's sort of modeling for them. And whether that doesn't have to be an outright negative thing, as you say, it can just be even perhaps pointing out the differences. Do we need to do that, or can you just let people get on with being who they are, and children learning for themselves about challenges and people's abilities, regardless of those challenges?
My parents, I think that as well, attitudes have changed a lot in a short space of time. When I was born in 91, which I'd like to say wasn't a long time ago, but actually it's like 28 years now. But like the attitudes have changed since then as well. Like I remember my mum and dad didn't know until about a year or so when I started crawling and I wasn't using my legs. I was just sort of crawling like this, and they were like, oh, that's a bit strange, why isn't she using her legs? And they were like, okay, maybe we should take her to the doctor. And then he just went, well, she'll never be an athlete. And then, which I kind of resent, actually. Like, actually, now thinking about it. And then my mum and dad were like, okay, what does that mean? Like, we don't really get it. And it was only in passing that the nurse went, oh, yeah, well, we see a lot of children with cerebral palsy. And my mum and dad were like, hold on a minute, what was that term you just used? Like, what does that mean? And then that was when they started learning about it. But you were very obviously fortunate because you got a lot of exposure, I think, even from a young age, but and positive exposure. And it was always, for me, it was always my parents, especially when applying for benefits or things like that, or getting what was then called a statement, which is now called an EHCP, Educational Healthcare Plan, which means you basically get TAs at school and things like that. When they were applying for that, it was all about what can't she do, what does she have, what does she struggle with, and then my parents were like, and my dad even had said, like, he was like, well, Holly can jump and she can run and this and that, and they were like, Mr. Smith, you need to tell us what she can't do. Like, I'm sorry, I'm glad you're feeling really positive about your daughter, but what can't she do? Which to an extent you understand, because they need to know where they can help. But again, it's always that framing of, like you say, to an extent, what do we say about how much do we let people just get on with it and children just get on with it and see what they can do before we limit them and say, no, you can't do that.
And it's always holding you back, like you were saying, they're saying what you can't do, actually.
Yeah.
Using them Paralympic, you want to know, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah,
what kind of future do you want?
What can you work towards?
Exactly.
Maybe
What's
you can't do
your
it
goal?
now, but
Yeah.
maybe in the future
Rather
you'll
than,
get
like
stronger.
you say, focusing on the now and thinking, well, she can't do all these things, so we'll just stop her from sports, we'll stop her from here. Whereas actually, as we know, especially with the, it's good that you mentioned the Paralympics, there was so much focus obviously on that, and you saw people doing amazing. You think, oh, actually, and there's people that are sort of, we say, able-bodied that wouldn't be able to have that much stamina. So actually,
And
that whole
you know what? It's
boundary.
only since 2012 that the Paralympics has been taken more seriously.
Exactly.
2012.
It's got coverage and media
Yeah.
and sort of role models coming out. But like you say, there's able-bodied people that wouldn't be able to do that.
And I'm just sitting here thinking, yeah, there must be some sort of sports or something they could have found for you to do anyway, if they were on your side.
But it's
Maybe
not, it's almost holding, like
Yeah,
you're saying.
because always have the can-do attitude, like if one hand is broken, use the other hand,
Yeah. But it's always.
Use the...
And I mean, my parents have struggled as well, and my mum and dad are very protective anyway. They're protective of my brother and sister. Some would say overprotective, but so then when I was diagnosed, the protection bubble went like overdrive. And so, there have been times where they've really struggled to let me do things myself because they've just worried, and it's a parent's thing, isn't it? And my mum and I especially butted heads a lot when I was a teenager because I'd be like, my friends are doing this, I want to do it. I want to go to the shops, I want to do this. And my mum would say, no, because I don't want to put you in that sort of situation. But then over time it's sort of loosening up, and it's always a learning curve, isn't it? And I suppose with every child it's always learning, the parents learning as well, but it just adds a bit of extra thing on top with the disabled person. Now I'm an adult, my mum doesn't get to tell me anything about what I do, but she'll still be there worrying away, like when I've flown to a different country on my own and stuff, she's like, what is she doing? Where is she? I don't know. She didn't want me to go, and she said to me, Holly, I don't want you to go, but I can't stop you. And that's the thing. You're always going to worry, but also it's so much about mindset, isn't it? It's not about what you can't do. It's like, okay, give it a go, see how you go.
I think you need to prep for the future as well, because like you were saying, I think there's so much independence may be taken away at some point. And then again with the whole benefits system, you have some people saying, well, they should have jobs, they should do this and that. Well, actually, if you haven't been prepped and primed to become independent, you can't just throw someone in the deep and be like, right, off you go. You've got this. And it's like, no, you have to, like you say, condition them from a young age to say, well, there might be different challenges, as with everyone. So then you're already, like you say, if you do want to travel on your own, you need to know what you need to look out for and prep yourself.
Of course.
But if you've never had that opportunity, and obviously you will have a life outside of your family or your spouse and so on, so again, it's weird that, like you said, people, they need to be protected, but at the same time, it's like, well, how far can you protect them? Because there will be a time when they will need to have their independence, and most people just aren't ready for that, and that's when the issues come in, and then they feel isolated because they're just not ready to kind of go out there and do what they probably do want to do, because they've been conditioned saying, well, you can't fly, you know, out of the country because it's too much hassle for you, you can't do this. Whereas as we know, actually there are, again, adjustments made, so it shouldn't really stop you. You should just be a bit more clever about it and plan for it.
You just have to be, again, it's like what Geraldine says, you just have to make the preparations.
Yeah,
and then,
which is what everyone has to do in
just
in
be
a general
more
thing when you're going to different countries and so on. So I think it's quite interesting, that people, I've heard those comments when they're like, oh no, she can't do this, she can't go there, she'll be with her parents or this person, and I'm thinking, well, they would probably want a life of their own.
I'm just going to say a point about autonomy, of like you say as well. So many people, I did a video on YouTube about like the importance of accessibility, and also I did one on how to approach a disabled person when you want to help them. And so many people, because I said, if someone's in a wheelchair, the main thing was wait for them to ask. Because if someone's in a wheelchair and you just grab a hold of the handles and start going and like pushing them around, they're going to be shocked, like, what on earth are you doing? But so many people do that. So many people. But it comes from a good place. They're like, I want to help you and I see you struggling, so let me help you. You know, and so many people then came to me and said, you know what, I never thought about that. Oh no, I've actually done that. Or like someone like reaching up to a shelf and then you just quickly grab it and give it to them and they're like, well, I was getting it, like it may take a little while, but or I didn't actually want that one, like, you know what I mean? Like,
I think we're all in that situation probably quite often.
Yeah.
And it is very difficult, because I can think recently when that happened, and it was someone who uses crutches to walk, and it was an older person as well. Clearly, you know, perfectly capable, I would think, but was struggling a bit to get something, or probably wasn't struggling a bit, but as I started, and I thought, oh, it's difficult to sort of know if I should help, because he clearly was obviously about to be able to do. Someone else stepped in and did it for, and he was sort of like, thank you, you know, I was okay. And I thought, oh, now I felt slightly bad that I didn't help, but then he was saying to the person, you know, I was doing all right, it was fine, sorry, it just takes me a minute or whatever.
You feel like it's such a minefield, but I think I just tried to say to people, ask them if they want help.
Yeah.
Is it alright? Do you need any help? And try not to feel scared about asking as well, because I think then people feel awkward about asking, because they think that means that they think I think they can't do anything, and it's all this thing. And I think it's like a British thing as well, of being a bit socially awkward and like what do I do? Like, but just ask instead.
Now that I'm thinking, I think I did ask actually, and that's why he was saying no, it's fine, I'm okay. But then this other person walked up
And
and
just like,
did it. And I was sitting there thinking, well, it's just sort of.
For me, my experience was the first time I meet Holly. I say, okay, I saw that she need a special support, special care. So I said, okay, I need to help. Then I thought it was your bag. I said, let me get it. He said, no, it's okay, I can do it. So I was very surprised and amazing to say, oh, there's people who everything is okay with them. They do not even do things and share. So I'm very proud of Holly. Even when you saw us the picture that you went on holiday and doing the jumping thing, I said, oh, you can do this. So I was very, very proud of you. Definitely. Yes.
You wouldn't want to do it, huh?
No, me no. Just so I can't do
But
that.
I must say that disability is sort of taking on work here in the western side of the world, not in my part of the world. Because I was brought up in an open-minded, I was given an open-minded upbringing where my parent always told us they frowned upon making jokes about disabled people or looking down on them or even bullying them. So that wasn't accepted at home at all. but it was the people around me, like my classmates, my cousins, my aunties, the extended family, that sort of, they make you believe that disability is contagious, even by playing with someone or eating with them. So I remember there was this time I went to a friend of mine. She was disabled. I was eating with her, and I saw a neighbor come into their house. Didn't say anything, didn't say a word to me or something like that. And then went home and told, obviously my parents were not home, but my auntie was looking over as they had traveled. So when I came home, I got a very terrible beating of my lifetime. Or don't you know they can pass on their disability to you, or someday when you get married and you want to have kids, all your children will be like them and all that. But when I started growing up, I was really curious to know why people treated them like that, or why they were like that. And I remember once on a journey in a coach, and then I came into contact with these beautiful, deaf and dumb girls. And if I was so fascinated how they could, make the sign language and laugh, but I was like, what's there to laugh? Because there's nothing, but I can understand their language, and the sign they were making. But they seemed to get on well. And there's so much stigmatization against disabled people in Ghana. That's and also I think I blame our leaders as well, because here you get support, you get benefits and all that. In Ghana we don't have anything like that. We don't have even benefit for kids or whatever. So these disabled people are pushed to go to the street to beg, to even afford 3 square or even a meal a day. So it's something that has always over the years been an issue, but thank God that that with the Western culture slowly creeping in, people have sort of like come to terms. I think it's all boils down to ignorance, education. People need that. So I remember people with cerebral palsy are sort of looked down, like termed as superstitious kids, or maybe the mother of that child went to have an extramarital affair with someone's husband and was cursed when the mother was pregnant or something like that. Or sometimes people make funny jokes like, oh, don't mind her, she's she probably the mother dropped her when she was giving birth to. So it's just ignorance and people not being educated enough about why they are like that and all that. But I think like we have an association in Ghana now where people with disability are even teachers. I don't know whether it was you. We have a lady who hasn't got even two legs and then the hands, but there's a small limb on the foot, but that's able to hold the pen and the chalk. She's a teacher. So I think slowly but surely, I think the education is creeping in and people are really coming to terms that it's not only superstition, it's just a medical issue, and we have to treat them like we want others to treat us. They don't have to be treated differently.
I think as you say, there's a lot of assumptions as well that come along with it to fill in the gaps where the knowledge isn't there. Like I've had people at school, someone assumed that I couldn't have children, and I was like, why? Like, I don't really as far as I know, I'm okay, I'm pretty fertile, I don't know. I haven't tried, to be honest, but okay. and then I was like, okay. And then some people, again, they think it's genetic, and I have to say, no, it's not. And then they think that, again, it's like, it's an accident that I've got into. No, it's not. It's those sorts of people, I think when they haven't got the education, they start to like fill in the gaps themselves with like these things, or ideas that have just been plucked out of the air, and then they're like, oh, it must be this or it must be that, because people are naturally curious and they want to know, but then they don't get told the truth. And one of my friends who's she's got cerebral palsy, but she's got the same effect as me, but she uses one crutch, and she's like completely independent. She works like 3 jobs and runs around and does everything. Bit too much sometimes. I kind of worry, calm down, you don't have to do everything. But she said to someone she works 3 jobs, and they were like, oh, that must be voluntary, right?
Oh no.
And she was like, no, actually I get paid for the work that I do, you know. And that really shocked me when she said it, and I was like, oh God, people still have these assumptions that we can't have a job that we get paid for and that we are knowledgeable about. And you know, and she's got like a sociology degree and everything like this, but like it's all still these assumptions that come along. And yeah, it's just those things that I think it's about changing the perception. And like, again, with stuff like dating, having boyfriends, girlfriends, marriage, children, again, disabled people are kind of like brushed under the carpet. And one thing actually that really annoys me is when you see on Facebook, it's like someone with perhaps Down syndrome, they get taken to the prom in America by someone, and they say, God bless this girl, she's taken this boy with Down syndrome to the prom, well done, well done. And you're just like, okay, she's such a hero, isn't she? Because she's forced herself to be with this person for this time and done such a nice gesture. And there's always that thing of like, especially if one person is a wheelchair user in the relationship, everyone's kind of like, and then they'll start being like, but how does it work in the bedroom, like, and all these sorts of things. And it's like, you wouldn't ask someone who's able-bodied these questions.
No, you wouldn't.
But for some reason you're making these weird assumptions and asking them about these things.
Or when they describe people as well, like with the wheelchair, instead of saying the lady in black, it'll be the lady with the crutch, or the lady
yeah, that's very true, isn't it?
And then, the one with brown hair, the woman in the...
Yeah, it's just
that
all these
woman
assumptions.
has a name.
Yeah.
More and more sort of
Very much.
backing and support for things that in the past they just didn't, you know.
Like things like fibromyalgia as well, and ME and things, they would just say, oh, you're lazy, you just don't want to get out of bed. And it's like, no. Actually,
it's a whole validation, because we were having this conversation, we were saying, well, you know, if you were pregnant or you'd broken your leg, they wouldn't even ask you to climb the stairs. They'd be like, all right, you can have the meeting downstairs.
Exactly.
So, like you say, taking disability out of the equation, just making adjustments for someone who's not able to, and obviously if the lift doesn't work, you know, if I'd broken my leg, I don't need to have a disabled badge.
No,
I literally cannot go up flight of stairs. So, like you were saying, they were being unreasonable, because in that example, it was just she wasn't able to, on this occasion, use the stairs. You can just make allowances for that, and it was just like you say, it's not really fair. But again, they were almost going back to her and saying, well, if you're going to use that, you need to have paperwork, you need to have this, you need to have all of that. And it's like, well, why? If you can make this allowance with someone else in a different situation, why can't you do it for me? So, like you say, it's not putting them out extra.
And she was offering alternatives as well. It wasn't like she was like, I'm not going to the meeting, I can't go upstairs. And she was like, I'll Skype in, I'll call in, I'll like do this, I'll do that, you know. And then she was even days where she'd be like, I'll work from home, I'll do this, I'll do that. But they were like, it was the employer was just terrible. But again, it's that constant fight that you have to fight.
Yeah. And it's also educating the employers as well, because sometimes they don't know.
Well, I think recently they were saying some employers won't even hire if they've got someone with disability. They might think, oh, we don't really know what to do, which is a stupid excuse not to hire someone, because if they're capable to do the job, they can do the
which
job.
Which is what I find really appalling, because like, only there's so much you can do. And I'm not saying I know why she's struggling to get jobs, but then I see no reason why people won't hire her.
It's because they feel like they have to go above and beyond. But like you say, actually, they make allowances for people who have cancer, who are heavily pregnant, who are sick. actually those type of allowances are made every day.
Yeah.
But when it comes up with the official person with disability, it's like, oh no, we don't want to touch that. And it's like, it's just a person. She just.
And I know they get them to tick the forms. What I think the government people should do is they should have a path where you actually meet certain groups of people in person, so that when you're actually trying to sort out who you're going to take, like shortlist people, you've actually met the person. I don't know how they're going to do it because you could get hundreds
But
of
you
people.
could show people
But you
around,
could
like you said,
yeah,
you're going for a job and
shortlist
have
people
say,
before.
this is the working environment. Do you think, for example, your wheelchair will be able to move around? Are you okay? This, you know,
Yeah,
again,
like
give
even
them the
setting this
options.
up as well, we set it up one way, and I thought, well, really, if somebody comes through with a wheelchair, have we got enough space?
Also, the push chairs as
Yeah,
well. So
yeah.
you know, different
Yeah.
things. We were like, okay, we'll make it
Yeah.
out. You know, we'll have to see if it works. But again, you
It's
know,
just being
employment.
flexible,
Yeah.
and like you said, like everyone with a disability, and even within the umbrella of cerebral palsy, we're so varied. Even among my friends group with other people who have cerebral palsy, who I've been to school with and stuff, we're so varied.
And it's
And
this
it's
thing
like-
as well, isn't it? Like, if there's something up, then you all should flock together, you know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so together.
Exactly. And
Deaf people together, and these people.
in school, that's why. That's
No.
part of the reason why I've got so many friends with cerebral palsy, because we were all just kind of like moved together.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this group, get more together like cows or something, you know. And I was like, okay, I don't mind. So it turns out I really like them. Like, and we're actually good friends. But it was just like, oh, let them all do physio together. Yeah, okay. Like, you know, it was that kind of thing of, yeah.
It's like
And-
something you said when I said somebody knows you in school, and then my heart really went out to you when you said, well, because of my disability, more people know me than I know them.
Yes.
And
Oh,
that
yeah.
was really touching, you know, something I'm like, oh, there's no. So they
So-
would know, that's Holly.
Yeah, so
That-
many
that's
people
the
are
only
like,
reason
oh,
I know.
Holly, hi. Or they'll talk to my sister and they'll be like, your sister's Holly, right? And then my sister will go, do you know this person? I'm like, no. But like, yeah, it kind of gives you an infamy,
Yeah.
I suppose, because they just know of you. Again, it was that special thing of like, oh, she's special. Like, you know, like, I don't. They might not have even talked to me in that time, but they know of me. And then, so obviously, when they're an adult, they'll see like my sister and they'll be like, oh, you're Holly's sister. And then I'll be like, I don't know who
And
this
that was it,
person
with volunteering. And someone said, oh, you got Holly. Oh, yeah, I know Holly. I went to school. And I just went, oh, do you know? And I was like,
It doesn't help that I'm quite an oblivious person anyway.
Yeah.
Like, do I? Oh yeah. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's like it just gives you that kind of. It is like an infamy, I suppose. They're like,
And-
oh, she's the girl who doesn't walk properly or whatever.
You're almost
like,
defined by it, which
Yeah,
shouldn't
yeah,
really be the case.
exactly.
You know?
and
Like,
it's
you have
really
your own
special as
identity.
well, where it's
Yeah.
like special educational needs. But somehow the special educational needs or special, the educational needs or whatever follows the word special is dropped. Because, oh, no, I don't want that. Oh, that's special needs. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
no, that's not the title for a person.
And it's not really special
That's a
anyway.
statement.
Yeah, yeah.
You break it down, like you say, it's just
Yeah.
support. And
But
there's
we're all
people
special
who
because,
might
like,
be
I like to
similar
feel
to you,
special
you know.
sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, I like
Yeah.
to feel special. I'm sure we all like to feel
Yeah.
I was,
special sometimes.
I was so stubborn in growing up. I was really stubborn. I didn't want to be treated differently, as you do when you know, especially when you're a teenager. You're like, oh, you'd rather die than be like different. You want to be the same as everyone. And I was like, gave back my wheelchair to the hospital because I was like, I'm not using that. And then I was like, no surgery. Every time they were like, okay, we got this surgery here, I was like, no, I don't want it, even though it might have actually helped maybe. And then when I was at school, I was like, always like, no, I don't want anything that's different, nothing. And it's just like, I think me being stubborn meant that, you know, I would have help there. I would literally have a TA and I'd be like, no, I'm fine. I'll carry this, I'll do this. And then my classmates would be like, well, as Holly's not using you, can you actually come? Because I'm actually really struggling. And then the TA would be like, oh, thank God I have something to do, you know. And then actually people around me ended up using my TA sometimes more than I would because of my stubbornness of doing things. And then they would be struggling and they'd be like, oh, can you help me with this actually? Because I actually need some help. But because they didn't have that physical disability marker, they were sort of just pushed to the side as well, which I always found kind of funny as well.
But that's what made you the person you are today. I think
It's
it's
determination.
moving on and
I suppose, yeah. But it's like, I find my parents find it really funny. We used to have these boots called Pedros. And I used to think they were god-awful boots, ugly boots, and I was like, I don't want to wear them. They're like big, chunky things that would get like made specially for you, probably quite expensive and everything. I didn't appreciate it. I was like, I don't want them. It makes me different from my friends. I want to wear like trainers and, you know, the pretty little flat shoes and stuff that would probably come flying off my feet anyway. And then my mum and dad were like, hold on a minute, you bought some DMs, which are basically similar to when I got older, I bought these massive boots. And they're like, didn't you used to hate those massive boots you used to wear? I'm like, yeah, I did. But like, you know, it was just that thing, isn't it? It was a marker of being different that I didn't like. And yeah, I guess it makes you more determined as well, because you then push through and
Push yourself.
it's better to be that way, I think, in a sense, because if you just accept all the help that's given to you, you might not challenge yourself enough. You might just be like, oh, I have help here, come here and help me. And yeah, it's just funny.
I mean, for some people, anyone really, I think who is overly, for whatever reason, sort of overly cared for, not allowed enough independence, any person, I think that can be disabling for them.
Yeah.
You know? And so, you know, I think you perhaps the challenges that you faced really have made you into a stronger sort of person in the end, which isn't a bad thing for anyone, actually, as much as
No, I
it's been
definitely think
challenging.
so. And I think it's also, I think parents need more support as well.
Yeah.
Because it is, I have no doubt that it's been really challenging for my parents at times. They've never told me this. They've never said anything about it because they don't want me to feel bad about it. But I have no doubt they've really struggled sometimes and not had any sort of support. But it's like, and like you say, even just the normal, thank you. Even just the normal kind of parental challenges of drawing that line about what do I let you do and what do I not let you do. It's just magnified a lot more, isn't it? Because
I think whatever you do, you do. Parents wouldn't want their kids knowing, they don't want to overburden us with their worries and stuff like that. They will forever worry about us. So I think they just didn't want you to see the struggles and all that. I think they just wanted to do everything possible for you to just be able to move around and just enjoy your time and be who you are. Yeah, I think so.
But it is down to personalities as well at the end of the day, because your parents were your parents and you're you, and it's that how that all has worked out because you are you. And other people struggle for different reasons, and the parents struggle for different reasons, maybe their education in the past or their worries. So for me it's about understanding that most human beings expect to look around the world and see people like them, and that's it. We don't really understand straight off something that's different. And doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but you can only do that through education, can't you? So we often fill in the gaps ourselves. We might meet somebody and think, gosh, I'm really open-minded about meeting this person, but in my head maybe I'm writing my own rhetoric about it. And that's the problem, because somewhere along the line you want that to have been fed by good information, so that I can react properly to things, so that I can react in the best way for everybody and appropriately. And I just think that's back to that education thing and understanding of how do we help people when they meet somebody who's not like them. What do I say to my grandchildren? Now they're nearly 6 and 3, and they will look at somebody and very innocently go, what's the matter with her? And you say, actually, I don't know, but it could be. And then you might talk about it, but not everybody's like that. Either they say, don't look, don't touch, don't talk about, because, or for whatever reason, or they over-explain. I always find parents that over-explain are as bad as ones that under-explain. Because they go on and on and on. The child's bored and gone to sleep.
It's true.
Which can also be as bad in the other way, because now you're setting up even more sort of possible prejudice or curiosity or whatever. I'm not, I don't know how you hit a happy medium, but it is quite difficult.
It
Well,
is.
like an interview I listened to where it's a man who's gone transgender into woman. So the family done all this, really wanting to prepare the grandparents. And I don't know if the grandchild maybe like 5 or 6 or something, and then said something like granddad or grandpapa is now. And the kids were playing, and they said the young child just went and said, "Granddad, oh, do you still have a penis?" And that was all the child wanted to know, and then
And
I
that's
don't
it,
remember
they
what the
finished.
answer
They're
was.
not
and
interested in
the
it.
child wasn't,
Yeah.
it was just simple. That's all the child wanted to know, and then
Yeah.
And
you
then
know.
when I've
No.
experienced it, there was recently actually I saw this woman at a bus stop with her little boy, and the little boy went, "What's the matter with your legs?" And I went, "Oh, I was born this way." And he's like, "Oh," and then
Yeah,
he just like
yeah.
goes off.
Yeah, that's it.
And it was the mum that was like, "I'm so sorry.
Mm.
I'm really sorry. Oh God." And then I felt embarrassed because the mum was embarrassed.
Mm.
I wasn't embarrassed by the initial exchange.
yeah.
I was just like, "Hey, that's fine." But then it was the adult's embarrassment that I was sort of feeding off and thinking, "Oh God, this has become a really awkward situation," you know. And it's that thing of like children.
I used to get my
Innocence,
train
yeah.
from Gatwick Airport, and I remember going to work one day, and this child had come out, maybe 4 or 5 years old, I don't know, and the child was staring at me. "Mom, look!" And you see, Mom. The child was going, and when the child was going, and I went, "Hi, Mom, it talks."
Oh my God!
And I went, "Hello." And the child went, "Hello." And the mom was going, "Oh, I'm sorry, no, that's fine." And then the child went,
Touching your hair.
Oh, bless her.
and mom was going, I said, "No, that's fine." And I knelt down,
Yeah.
and the child was,
Aw.
when she was, I think, happy, she was like,
Yeah.
okay, and I thought, she's probably thinking, okay, then let's go, and I'm just holding along for my train. But then,
Yeah.
that's a lot better than if the mom had gone like, "Don't do that," or what,
Yeah.
or people are going offended. For me, I just look, she's probably come from wherever, coming to England, come out, and the first person she says, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
That's true.
what's that? And then that's it.
Because that reminds me, my daughter, when she was 10, met someone. We're just we're having a walk, and then she saw someone with a disability on the, the lips were really in a bad form. And kids are really curious. She doesn't even know him. He went like, in Ghana we call anyone who is older than you, even male, you call them uncle, auntie. So say, "Uncle, what happened to your mouth?" It's like she just literally went like that, blah blah blah. I was like that. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "You know what? It's the best thing she ever did. I mean, to ask, then she get educated and get to know." And when the man explained to me, up to now, it's still, she still asks me, "Oh, Mom, do you remember this man that we met?" That's it. And then from time on, I say that, look, don't treat anyone differently because of the way they look or something like that. It's nothing about what they did or they are like us, So just treat everyone just the same.
There's something I read about being a parent and dealing with, when your child is staring at someone. It's like, don't say to them, "Don't stare." Say hello. Say hello. And then it's like, rather than being like, "Don't stare at them."
Yeah.
It's like, say hello, because then you're acknowledging that person is
It's
a
a
person.
person,
a thing.
And also the
That's
child
a good
is
thing.
stupid. The child
Yeah.
knows the person stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or when I'd gone to a school, I think it was a school event or something, and this boy was sitting next to me, and I think he was deaf or dumb, I didn't realize. And then he was just doing that, and his dad was going to apologize, and I said, "No, that's fine." And then the dad told me he was doing that to my face. And I was saying, he says, "He likes you," and he was doing.
Oh.
So for a while, just sat there, and he was doing that, and I was doing, and he was laughing, and I was with my
That's
son.
good. Yeah.
And later on, he said, "What were you saying to that boy?" I said, "I don't know," but he was laughing, so.
Why not?
We had a good half an hour conversation.
Yeah.
And for me, I get bored easily, but I didn't get bored with this one. We were just, which is, the best thing to do, just that we talk. acceptance.
I think it's a cultural thing because, like you say, it's almost like the everyone has their personal space. So, like, especially in some countries, you have no personal space. But it's not like here. It's like someone even touches you with their hand. Like, my goodness, it's like you've been burned or something.
And if this one was the back of his hand, he used to touch your face, and I think that's the sign of him saying. Because the other one like no,
very open. And I think
you're so very right.
Europeans don't like being touched.
No, and sort of no one near their
or
space.
anywhere. I want my space.
You're sitting next to them where it's not. Whereas, like you say, when you go, there'll be children running around and grabbing you. And just like, goodness, I don't know whose child this is. Like, but I think again, because we come from, it's very informal.
They come up to you and it's auntie, and suddenly
they start grabbing you and all that.
And like you say, everyone's your uncle or auntie, or you're someone's auntie. Like, I've never seen you before, but again, you just go with it. And I think that's what I've noticed as well, actually, because you see that a lot. Like
It's a big cultural
it is, because when you go up,
we need to educate adults first. Sometimes adults, they don't know how to approach such a thing.
So even like you said, different ethnicities and things like that.
Yeah, I think
and you're a minority.
Right.
Actually, then it's a kind of like, oh, okay, how do I even approach this?
I think that's why we started this first, because first we used to have the babies, and I think that's why it worked. It worked, because I remember somebody walked in once and he wrote an article on that way, and I remember an article saying like Geraldine doesn't only multitask, she even has a baby on her lap. So I had a baby and the mother was doing it, and at the same time you're directing, getting them to sign in and doing, all these things. I think it's a cultural thing, but maybe that's why this has worked as well. And
I think there's also part of the cultures on the other side as well, because I have witnessed, not experienced myself, encounters where people have been curious to somebody disabled and had their heads bitten off, and therefore they'll never go near that subject again. And it's very difficult, because again, that's a personality thing, isn't it? It's a bit like you said, just because you're disabled doesn't mean you're actually necessarily a nice person or want to engage. And that's quite hard for kids as well sometimes. It's very sort of, I mean, my granddaughter, you wouldn't have to say to her, if you were staring, say hello, she'd have drawn a chair up beside them already and gone, so, tell me how this is how she would be, which I think is great. But if she's not well received for doing that's kind of difficult for her, because then she'd be quite upset, and all she wanted to do was ask a question. It's really difficult all round, actually, isn't it? I mean, I
go on a forum, a Cerebral Palsy forum on Reddit. And it's interesting to see even the different people who have cerebral palsy, their different ideas, and some of them, they're going on Tinder and dating websites, and they say, when do you think it's okay for me to bring up the cerebral palsy? Because I don't want to, and I feel really bad, because they might have been talking to someone and then they don't want to ruin it in a sense by saying, oh yeah, I've got cerebral palsy, and then they think they're going to get scared off. And that just boggles my mind, because I just want to say it straight off, I've got cerebral palsy, there you go. And I say it to my brother, like before, I was like, sometimes it is a bit of a buffer for people you don't want to be around. Because if they're not going to accept you for that, then I'm like, well, I don't want you to be around anyway. But like you say, even though I'm saying, come and talk to me and ask me questions, not every disabled person is like that. So again, it can be quite a minefield, because you think, can I ask? Because then you might ask, and then they're like, oh, I'd rather you didn't ask me that, actually. And then you'd be like, like I've done something really wrong. And it's I think it's just, even for the people affected by the physical disability, it's just telling them that it's okay to talk about it. And okay to be asked and ask questions, and make it less of a taboo, I guess, to just talk about it.
I think, like you say, when you're an adult, it's completely different when you're a child. Because, like you say, you don't pick up on social cues and things. Whereas I think if we're an adult, we'll know if you're awkward, or first of all, if you've even got that rapport to, it's like asking a personal question, and we get this, they're like, oh, you're not married, or this, So again, I think it's social cues and culture, but that's the sort of common sense approach. So obviously if someone knows, we have a question, if we've built that rapport, then we would know, she might be okay with it. But if it's someone random, literally just come, and I think it's the way you ask as well. So like you say, if you're asking because you just really want to learn about it, that's fine to just come out and say that. Whereas if you're just, I'd rather, like you say, I think most people that are affected by it would rather speak on it than have other people speak for them.
Yeah.
So they'll be like, it's like me, you know, if you didn't know Holly, and I'll be like, oh, that's Holly, she can't do this, you know, but no, you're here, so you can explain yourself. You don't need me to tell Shirley and be like, well, Holly's here, this is what she does, she can't do this. You need to make sure, actually, that's a bit more demeaning for you. It's almost like, again, I've just, my own sort of view has been projected onto you and then onto someone else, and then she's probably going to tell someone else.
Exactly.
So I think it depends on the person.
And also it's a point of where is it necessary to bring up. I think you and I once, I don't know where we were, anyway. I was waiting for the bus and Holly was going, oh, the numbers coming up, and I'm standing there even with the glasses on, I can't do it. So at that point, who's the person who needs extra help?
You know.
Exactly. No, number this, because especially at the hospital, I have to take a guess. So most times I just put my hand out anyway.
Yeah, because it looks really similar from far away.
Because looking for the 2 and the 1.
But again, you just ask yourself. So at work, actually, someone we were doing, like, obviously we do our get-togethers, like different sort of restaurants and things, and some of the restaurants, obviously, for this person, like even a step is a problem, so we have to be really careful. So everyone was kind of being touchy about it and thinking, oh no, and I was thinking, well, I'll just ask, I'll just say, this is a restaurant. I gave it, and I said, I'll call the restaurant, and I you know, on Google Maps, I even got the pictures and sent them to her, and I was like, right, this is a picture. She was like, I'm going to go look at the venue, drive past and look myself, just so I can see if there's parking nearby. But again, it wasn't a big deal, like then what people had told me, because they were like, oh, this person's a bit sensitive, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not like overly friendly with them, but at the same time, we still have that rapport. But again, I just went privately and said, look, we're doing a get together for, you know, the Christmas meal. This is a restaurant we've chosen. Would it be okay for your needs? If not, I can have a look on someone else. And she thought, no, it's fine. But again, it wasn't. You don't need to make it a big deal.
No.
You know, in that situation, you know, just find out where the venue is, the pictures, what their step-free access is like, if there's any, if there's a ramp, and so on. And
people, most people,
they'd appreciate
they would really appreciate.
Yeah, and they appreciate that, because it's like you say, it's not where. And then obviously, because for this person, it was kind of like, well, don't change it just because of me. And I was like, well, no, because no one's made. You know, you're the one that sort of we need to make sure can come, and everyone else hasn't got a preference. You know, they've said you can choose what you want. So I said it's not a problem. But in the end, I wasn't able to make it. But again, it was just a really simple thing. I just thought if I'd gone based on what other people were saying, then I would have probably not have asked at all, and just sort of been a bit, you know, like, oh, send the invite out. And then again, that person might have thought, well, they've left me out again. You know, they haven't discussed it with me. So I just thought I'll do that, but again, it was fine. So yeah, I think you have to judge it based on your own, how you're approaching it and what your intentions are as well.
Yeah, and even if they do take offence, you can say, well, I know my intentions were good.
And at least you know next time. Yeah, at least you know for next time and say, I'm sorry. You know,
I'm sorry. How can I?
I won't ask this again.
It's like, and even me as a disabled person, I have the worries about asking people about things, of course. And like I remember when I was doing my masters, one of the ladies was in a wheelchair. And I was so curious. I was like, I want to know what's going on. Like, and we got like to know each other a bit more. And I was like, what have you got? And then we burst out laughing. And then she was like, oh, what's wrong with you? And I was like, no, I didn't mean it like that. And then they were like, I've got MS. And then I was like, oh. And then I was like, I've got cerebral palsy. And she was like, I know. And I was just like, okay. But then actually we started laughing. And I was like, and it was fine, and we laughed, and like, but it made me laugh. And like, you know, it's just because we're all human.
Like you said, I think that shows as well. There's no right answer. No, there is no right way to ask.
No, there
isn't. There ever will be.